Hey guys, it's Joe here with J Blake Photo, and I'm coming to you the week of CES here in Las Vegas. Now, I decided not to attend the show this week, this year, partly because I'm too busy. There's too much stuff going on, but also because when I went last year, honestly, there wasn't anything there that I hadn't already seen or heard about, and I felt like I was getting more information on Twitter or on some of the blogs that I follow or on YouTube, and not on the show floor. And a great example of that is what we got today, which was the announcement from Canon of the new 1DX Mark III. It is finally out in the wild. We finally have official specs, and I want to get into them. Now, contrary to popular opinion, I actually do listen to you guys. I actually do read the comments. And I know two things. Number one, I'm going to keep this as brief as possible because you guys don't like it when I go long. I have a tendency to go a little long. I apologize for that, and I'm going to try and keep this one as brief as possible. So we're not going to go through every single detail. And secondly, you don't like it when I talk about a camera and I don't have the camera. Well, guess what? I don't have the camera because it's not out yet, so I'm sorry. Nobody has this camera. But Peter McKinnon on his channel actually did a great kind of hands-on. He didn't get to shoot with it or really use it, but he did get to touch it, play with the buttons and play with the menus and stuff. And so I will link that down below. Go ahead and check out Peter's channel. Go ahead and check out his video. Spoiler alert, it looks a lot like the Mark II. Okay, so since there's not a lot of changes to the body, let's spend 2 minutes talking about the photo features. We'll spend 2 minutes talking about the video features, and we're gonna spend 60 seconds talking about my thoughts. Okay, so the photo specs. This is a traditional DSLR. It's coming with a 20.1 megapixel sensor. That should sound familiar because that was the exact same size of the previous sensor. But this is a completely new and revamped sensor. It's completely different. But it also has no IBIS. It's running a brand new Digic 10 or Digic X processor that is 3.1 times faster at image processing than the previous camera and 380 times faster at processing autofocus. ISO maximum has been bumped up to 102,000 with a high 3 mode of almost 900,000 ISO. Whether or not that will be usable, we'll determine that later. Now, since this is a DSLR, it does have a traditional old style AF point system with 191 AF points, 155 of which are cross type. Because this is a traditional DSLR system, these autofocus points are going to be down towards the middle of the camera, not all the way around like you'd find in a mirrorless camera. Though the processing has added both head and face detection, like right now I'm using the IAF in the EOS R, so it has added some bit of what it's calling deep learning and the ability to track heads and faces. But like most Canon cameras, this camera has the ability to flip the mirror up and use that dual pixel CMOS sensor autofocus system for some really phenomenal results. In this case, it's got 90% coverage of autofocus points up to 525 autofocus points. You have the option, however, to flip up the mirror and use the rear LCD, and in that case, you'll actually be able to use the dual pixel AF for continuous autofocus and shoot at 20 frames per second. Now, I kind of want to call this mirrorless mode, but it's not really mirrorless mode because with a mirrorless camera, you can look through the viewfinder, whereas in this case, you do have to have the camera kind of out in front of you to be able to view as you take these shots. Now, to record all these shots, you're going to have dual CFast card slots, and these card slots are coupled with a buffer that Canon claims will go up to 1,000 shots before it slows down. Okay, I don't know if that was in under 2 minutes, but now let's talk about video specs. This is where I was super surprised. Okay, so video. This camera will shoot 5.5K RAW 10-bit in C-Log to the internal CFast cards, and it'll do it in 60, 30, and 24 frames per second. It's also going to give you 4K DCI in 60, 30, and 24 frames per second, UHD 4K in 60, 30, and 24 frames per second, and 1080p at 120, 60, 24 frames per second, although 24 frames per second is going to be coming in a firmware update, which is kind of weird, but whatever. A couple points to mention though. On the autofocus system for the video features, if you are shooting in 60 frames a second in either 5.5K, the 4K DCI, or the 4K UHD, you do not get autofocus. It just does not work at all, the autofocus system. There is, however, a 4K DCI crop mode. It does give you access to the full autofocus system. Now the 4K signal is not cropped, it is actually oversampled from the 5.5K, so it should be really, really clear. This should be an awesome image coming in at 4K. Also, strangely, they continued the tradition of having the 1080p 120 frame per second mode not record audio. They're continuing that in the 1DX line. That seems to be the signature of the 1DX line. But again, all of that being recorded directly into the CFast cards that are in the camera. So how much is this thing gonna cost? We're gonna get it in February, and it's gonna be $6,500. $6,500. That's more expensive than the original 1DX Mark II when it was announced. Whew, that is not cheap. Okay, so here's 1 minute and my thoughts. The lack of autofocus in 60 frames a second is weird. Why can't this CPU that they've been developing for 3.5 years do it? Why? It's got to be a bandwidth issue. It can't handle the incoming data while also handling the AF control. I just don't understand it. Why can't they get a chip that can do this? My assumption is that if you can afford this camera, you can afford a focus puller. Nonetheless, I am super excited and surprised that this camera has such great video features. Way to go, Canon. Very happy about the speed that this camera brings in both modes. Though I don't think a lot of people will be using the LCD for that 20 frames a second. I think everybody's going to be using the OVF because that's the crowd that's going to be using this camera. So who's it for? Well, we've been asking that same question about the newly released Mac desktop, and honestly, this is for the bleeding edge. Pros who need rugged construction and unparalleled performance. They need the best, and it doesn't matter how much it costs. I will say it's super interesting to see this continued push into the hybrid video photo shooter world for Canon. I'm really happy about it. I'm really happy that they're adding these other features. What I really want to see is a mirrorless camera with some of these features and those back illuminated buttons. That is so cool. I want that. I want that so bad, Canon. Please give me that for my birthday. Anyway, guys, I hope I got that all into the wire. I don't know yet. I won't know until I actually edit it. But that's going to be it for me. I hear in 2020, if you hit the thumbs up button, the subscribe button, then the bell, there's some kind of Easter egg that pops up in YouTube. Give that a try. I'll see you in the next video.